They say that when you tell one lie, you need 10 more to cover it up. For Meghan Markle, the past 30 days have been a masterclass in damage control that spectacularly backfired at every single turn. What started as routine PR management descended into something much darker, a systematic unraveling of credibility that even her most devoted supporters are struggling to defend. Every statement contradicted by evidence, every denial exposed by receipts, every attempt at image rehabilitation only digging the hole deeper. This isn't just a bad news cycle. This is watching someone's entire public persona collapse in real time, lie by lie, excuse by excuse, until there's nothing left but the truth they tried so desperately to hide. It all kicked off with what seemed like a minor inconsistency that most people probably would have missed. During a promotional interview for their latest Netflix project, Meghan sat there with that carefully practiced smile and insisted that she and Harry had minimal involvement in the production. Just executive producers in name, she said, stepping back to let the creatives lead, respecting the artistic process, all that Hollywood talk that sounds impressive but usually means nothing. Within hours, literally hours, leaked emails from the production team started circulating, and they told a completely different story. Internal correspondence revealing that Meghan had personally vetoed interview subjects, demanded re-edits of entire episodes, and even written dialogue for certain segments herself. One producer, speaking anonymously to The Hollywood Reporter, didn't hold back. She micromanaged every frame, they said. The idea that she was hands-off is laughable. We couldn't make a single decision without her approval, and her approval changed daily. The PR team scrambled into action. Sunshine Sachs, her high-powered agency, issued one of those carefully worded statements, claiming the emails were taken out of context and that Meghan's involvement was collaborative, not controlling. Standard damage control playbook. Deny, deflect, reframe. But then came the second leak, and this one was devastating. Voice memos from actual production meetings, and you can hear Meghan's voice clear as day saying, "This is my story, my narrative. I won't have it diluted by people who don't understand the vision." The damage control had failed before it even had a chance to take hold. People weren't buying it anymore. Just as that scandal was starting to fade from the headlines, investigative journalists at the Times dropped an absolute bombshell that sent shockwaves through the charity world. For years, Meghan and Harry had been positioning themselves as these great philanthropists, talking endlessly about their charitable work through the Archwell Foundation. But the newly released tax filings told a story that was impossible to spin away. The foundation had taken in $13 million in donations from well-meaning supporters who thought their money was going to help people in need. But here's the shocking part. Only $3 million actually went to charitable causes. $3 million out of 13. Where did the other $10 million go? According to the official filings, it disappeared into administrative costs, consulting fees, and operational expenses. $10 million on overhead for a foundation that was supposed to be lean and efficient. Meghan's response was lightning fast, obviously prepared by lawyers who knew this was coming. A statement claiming the reporting was misleading, that the foundation was building infrastructure for long-term impact, that you have to invest in systems before you can scale impact. All the buzzwords that sound good in a TED Talk but don't actually explain where $10 million went. When reporters started digging deeper, because of course they did, they uncovered something even more disturbing. Much of those consulting fees went to firms owned by personal friends of the Sussexes. The operational expenses included lavish travel and accommodation for so-called philanthropic trips that looked suspiciously like luxury vacations when you examined the receipts. 5-star hotels, first-class flights, Michelin-starred restaurants, all billed as operational expenses for charity work. Charity watchdogs were not impressed at all. One expert speaking to CNN didn't mince words. This is a vanity project masquerading as a charity. The financials are alarming and raise serious questions about whether this organization should maintain its tax-exempt status. That's the kind of quote that destroys credibility because it's coming from an independent expert with no axe to grind. The damage control this time was almost comically transparent. A glossy, highly produced video suddenly appeared on Archwell's Instagram, showing smiling children, heartfelt testimonials, soaring music, the whole emotional manipulation package. But here's what it didn't show: any actual explanation of the finances, any breakdown of where the money went, any accountability whatsoever. It was pure distraction, and people saw right through it. Just when you thought it couldn't get worse, it did. If there was one thing that was supposed to be sacred, one area where Harry had genuine credibility and respect, it was his work with the Invictus Games. The Wounded Veterans competition he founded was genuinely meaningful, genuinely impactful. Nobody questioned his commitment to that cause. Nobody, that is, until Meghan opened her mouth at a veterans event and made a claim so audacious, so easily disprovable, that it left people genuinely shocked. Speaking at a fundraiser, she looked straight into the camera and said, "I was instrumental in bringing Invictus to North America. It was my vision, my networking, my connections that made it happen. Without my involvement, the American Games wouldn't exist." The reaction from veterans groups was immediate and furious. Because the truth, the easily verifiable, documented in 100 press releases truth, was that Invictus had been planned for North America years before Meghan even met Harry. The organizers had already secured funding from corporate sponsors, locked down venues, built partnerships with military organizations. All of that infrastructure was in place before Meghan Markle was anywhere near the picture. Her actual role had been purely ceremonial, showing up at events, posing for photos, giving the occasional speech written by someone else. That's it. To claim she was instrumental in its creation was not just an exaggeration, it was a flat-out lie. And veterans do not take kindly to stolen valor, even of the civilian variety. Retired military officials took to social media, and their words were scathing, disrespectful, a slap in the face to the people who actually did the work, an insult to every veteran who competes in these games. The Invictus Foundation itself was forced to issue a statement, carefully worded, legally vetted, but unmistakably a correction. They clarified Meghan's role in language so diplomatic it was almost painful, essentially saying she attended events and provided support, but was not involved in the planning or execution. That's foundation speak for she's lying, but we can't say that directly. And notably, conspicuously, Harry said absolutely nothing. Didn't defend her, didn't clarify, just silence, which told you everything you needed to know about whether even he could defend this particular lie. The damage control attempt this time was bizarre. Meghan's PR team started planting stories in friendly outlets about her private donations to veterans charities. Unnamed sources claiming she'd personally given hundreds of thousands of dollars that she never publicized because she's just that humble and genuine. But when actual journalists asked for specifics, which charities, which amounts, any documentation whatsoever, the sources went silent. The stories quietly disappeared. No follow-up, no verification, because they couldn't verify what didn't exist. It was a desperation play that only made things worse. And then came the revelation that tied everything together, the lie that exposed the whole rotten foundation underneath. For years, Meghan had built her entire California brand around one central claim, that she and Harry left royal life to protect their children's privacy. The lawsuits against tabloids for publishing photos of Archie, the angry statements about paparazzi, the lectures about the trauma of growing up in the spotlight. Privacy, privacy, privacy. It was the justification for everything. For leaving the UK, for cutting off the royal family, for limiting contact with grandparents, all in service of giving Archie and Lilibet a normal, private childhood away from the cameras and scrutiny. But then court documents in a completely separate legal case got unsealed, and they revealed something absolutely explosive. Evidence that Meghan had been shopping a reality show concept featuring the children to streaming networks as early as 2021. Not recently, not as some new idea, but from the very beginning of their California life, while she was simultaneously suing people for invading her children's privacy. The pitch deck was detailed, professional, clearly the work of expensive consultants. It described an intimate look at modern royal parenting with unprecedented access to the Sussex family life. There were mock-ups, taglines, marketing strategies, everything you'd need to sell a show based entirely on the very exposure she claimed to be protecting her children from. This wasn't just hypocrisy. This was calculated, systematic deception on a level that shocked even the most cynical royal watchers. For 3 years, Meghan had played the victim, claimed the media's interest in her children was harassment and invasion of privacy, weaponized that grievance against anyone who questioned her. And all along, she was trying to monetize that very interest herself. She didn't want privacy for her children. She wanted control of the commercialization. She wanted to be the one making money off them, not the tabloids. It was never about protection. It was about profit. The public reaction was unlike anything we'd seen before. Even outlets that had been sympathetic, that had given her the benefit of the doubt, that had defended her against criticism, they couldn't defend this. People magazine, which had run countless positive Meghan stories, published an article with the headline, "Privacy Claims Called into Question." That's about as damning as People gets, and it signaled a fundamental shift. The Atlantic ran a think piece about the commodification of children by celebrity parents. The New York Times did a deep dive into the contradiction between public statements and private actions. The mainstream media had finally reached its tipping point. The damage control this time was the most desperate yet. Her lawyers came out claiming the pitch deck was exploratory, never serious, just something they looked at but never pursued. Standard legal hedging language designed to technically avoid perjury while still being completely misleading. But then, because at this point the leaks were coming from everywhere, anonymous sources revealed that Netflix had actually offered $20 million for the show. $20 million! And Meghan had only turned it down because Harry absolutely refused to participate. He drew a line, one of the only lines he's apparently drawn in this entire mess, and said no, the children would not be content. Without his cooperation, the show couldn't happen, so it died. But not because Meghan had a moral epiphany, only because she couldn't get Harry's agreement. What makes this month so utterly damning isn't any single lie in isolation. It's the pattern that emerged when you laid them all out together. Every scandal following the exact same playbook with mechanical precision. Make a false claim, get caught with irrefutable evidence, issue a vague, lawyered-up denial, plant counter-stories in friendly media through unnamed sources, attack the messengers as biased or racist or part of a conspiracy, move on and hope the news cycle shifts before accountability sets in. That's the Markle method, and it worked for a while. Worked for years, actually. But when the lies started coming weekly, sometimes daily, the public began to see the machinery. The manipulation became too obvious, the pattern too clear. The damage control couldn't keep pace with the revelations. Royal commentators started using a term that perfectly captured what was happening: death by 1,000 cuts. Not one massive scandal that destroys you instantly, but a relentless accumulation of smaller lies that erode credibility until there's nothing left. Each contradiction building on the last, each failed damage control attempt making the next one harder. Each new revelation making people go back and question everything they'd been told before. If she lied about this, what else did she lie about? If the damage control failed here, what other spin have we been accepting uncritically? The doubt spreads like a virus through everything, contaminating, tinting even the legitimate grievances. The consequences are cascading now in ways that must be terrifying if you're sitting in Montecito trying to salvage what's left of the brand. Netflix is reportedly reevaluating their entire relationship with the Sussexes. Not publicly, not officially, but those are the whispers coming from multiple sources inside the streaming giant. Spotify already cut ties completely after the podcast deal produced minimal content and maximum controversy. WME, the Hollywood super agency that signed Meghan with such fanfare, is set to be in crisis meetings. Some agents reportedly arguing they need to drop her before she becomes toxic by association. Others saying they're contractually committed and just need to ride it out. But nobody's arguing that things are going well. Nobody's claiming this is salvageable with better PR. The polling data tells a story that's almost impossible to spin away. YouGov's latest numbers show Meghan's favorability rating has cratered to 18%. 18! That's lower than Prince Andrew, who's been credibly accused of horrific things. That's lower than politicians caught in corruption scandals. And this isn't just in the UK, where you might expect the public to turn against her. Even in the United States, her supposed safe haven, the market she was courting for commercial deals, more Americans now view her unfavorably than favorably. The shift happened fast, but it happened decisively. The damage control has completely, utterly, catastrophically failed. Behind the palace walls in London, there's a mood that sources describe as quiet vindication mixed with profound sadness. For years, the royal family was painted as the villain in Meghan's story, the institution that rejected her, the family that was cruel to her, the in-laws who were racist and unsupportive. That narrative dominated for so long that questioning it got you labeled as part of the problem. But now, the public is seeing what the palace staff saw from the beginning, what the family members witnessed but couldn't speak about publicly, the pattern of manipulation, the casual relationship with truth, the willingness to burn any bridge, betray any confidence, destroy any relationship in service of the personal brand. The king has maintained his policy of dignified silence, but people close to him say he's privately heartbroken and simultaneously relieved. Heartbroken that it came to this, relieved that the truth is finally emerging without him having to be the one to expose it. There are rumors, unconfirmed but persistent, that he's considering legal action, specifically around the children's titles. The possibility that they could be used in commercial ventures is something the palace legal team is taking very seriously. If Prince Archie's organic snacks becomes a real product line, the palace will shut it down with everything they've got. They're drawing lines now that they should have drawn years ago. Prince William's response is less measured than his father's. Friends say he's moved past anger into something colder and more final. A kind of write-off where you stop expecting better and just cut your losses. He and Catherine have spent their entire lives protecting George, Charlotte, and Louis from exploitation. One photo a year, taken by their mother, shared with the world, and then back to privacy. That's the boundary. That's the line between public duty and private childhood. To William, what Harry has allowed to happen is unforgivable. Not just a betrayal of their brotherhood, but a betrayal of everything their mother stood for. Diana fought the paparazzi to give her son's privacy. Harry's wife is inviting the cameras in and asking for a bidding war. The irony is so bitter, it's almost unbearable. The shocking part isn't what the royals are doing now, it's what they're not doing. They're not defending her, not issuing statements of support, not trying to mediate or bridge build or find common ground. They're just letting her self-destruct in slow motion while they maintain their distance. And in the game of public opinion, that silence speaks volumes. It says, "We told you so," without having to say anything at all. It validates every concern, every warning, every piece of advice that was ignored. The royals are watching the vindication unfold without lifting a finger because they don't have to. The truth is doing their work for them. Behind the scenes, former staffers are finally starting to talk. Not officially, not on the record, but the whispers are consistent enough to form a pattern. One former Architwell employee described a workplace culture that was all about optics with no substance. Everything was about creating the appearance of work without doing actual work, they said. Meetings about meetings, strategies about strategies, brand development sessions that went in circles, but no real impact on the ground, no real charitable outcomes beyond photo ops. Another source from the Netflix production painted a picture of chaos and control. She would change her mind constantly, love something on Monday, hate it by Wednesday. The crew was exhausted. And then she'd do interviews about empowering creatives and giving them freedom. It was gaslighting on an industrial scale. These accounts, even anonymous, fit perfectly with the documented lies. They suggest this month isn't an aberration. It's just standard operating procedure getting exposed. Financial analysts who track celebrity brands are painting a grim picture of the Sussex finances. The Montecito mansion costs an estimated $4 million annually just in upkeep, property taxes, and maintenance. Security is another $2 to $3 million, possibly more given Harry's insistence on presidential-level protection. Add in staff salaries, the PR team, the lawyers handling multiple lawsuits, travel, wardrobe, and everything else that goes into maintaining the lifestyle, and the burn rate becomes astronomical. Meanwhile, the income streams are drying up faster than anyone predicted. The Spotify deal is dead. Netflix is souring. Brand partnerships that seemed promising a year ago are quietly being shelved. The math doesn't work anymore. And when wealthy people get desperate, that's when the lies get more brazen, more frequent, more reckless. Hence the escalation we're seeing. The lies about Invictus trying to claim credit for fundraising that might attract donors. The lies about Archwell trying to appear philanthropic for potential partnerships. The lies about Netflix trying to seem relevant for future deals. It's all about survival now, about keeping the money flowing long enough to figure out the next move. But here's the problem with that strategy. The more desperate the lies become, the more transparent they are. And the more transparent they are, the faster the remaining opportunities disappear. It's a death spiral, and everyone watching can see where it's heading. Everyone except, apparently, the people trapped inside it. The media landscape has shifted in ways that are probably permanent. For years, certain outlets were reliably sympathetic to Meghan. Glossy profiles, softball interviews, benefit of the doubt coverage that bordered on hagiography. But this month represents a turning point that even the friendliest journalists can't ignore. When you have leaked emails, unsealed court documents, and verified financial filings, you can't spin your way out. The evidence is too concrete, the contradictions too obvious. Journalists who were once accused of racism for questioning Meghan can now point to documentary proof and say, this isn't bias, this is fact-checking, this is our job. The dam has broken, and the mainstream media is finally willing to report critically because the cost of not doing so is their own credibility. People who followed this saga closely say Harry seems devastated in a way that goes beyond just bad press. Multiple sources claim he didn't know about the reality show pitch featuring the children, didn't know about the exaggerated Invictus claims, is discovering along with the public the full extent of how his life has been manipulated and packaged and sold. The marriage is under strain that friends describe as unprecedented. There are reports of arguments, long silences, Harry spending more time away from the house. He's questioning everything now. The move to California, the break with his family, the entire trajectory of the past 5 years. And the truly tragic revelation is that Harry might be the biggest victim in all of this. A man who gave up his family, his country, his identity, based on a version of reality that's now crumbling in front of him. The psychological toll of that kind of revelation is incalculable. The children are the silent victims in all of this. Too young to understand what's happening, but old enough to sense the tension, the stress, the chaos. Growing up in an environment where their parents see them as brand assets rather than just kids, where their names, their images, their very existence is being strategized and monetized. Child psychologists who work with children of celebrities talk about the long-term damage this causes, the difficulty forming authentic relationships when you've been taught your value lies in your marketability, the trust issues that develop when parental love feels conditional on performance. Archie and Lilibet didn't choose any of this. They're just collateral damage in their parents' desperate attempt to monetize royalty without the responsibilities that come with it. As this month of lies exposed draws to a close, the question everyone's asking is whether recovery is even possible. The damage control has failed at every single turn. The shocking revelations have systematically destroyed credibility across every domain: charitable work, professional projects, family relationships, parenting philosophy. The brand that was supposed to be worth hundreds of millions is now actively toxic. Allies are deserting, opportunities evaporating, public opinion has turned decisively and probably permanently. The only strategy left is the one Meghan keeps falling back on: play the victim, blame the media, blame the royals, blame systemic racism, blame everyone but yourself. But that card is wearing dangerously thin. There are only so many times you can cry wolf, claim persecution, demand sympathy before people stop listening, before they see the pattern for what it really is. This month has revealed something that can't be unrevealed, a fundamental truth that changes how everything will be viewed going forward. Meghan Markle is not the person she's claimed to be, not the feminist icon, not the humanitarian, not the protective mother, not the truth teller speaking truth to power. She's someone who built an entire public persona on manufactured narrative, selective truth, and outright lies when necessary. And once that trust is broken, once that foundation cracks, it cannot be repaired. You can't rebrand your way out of being exposed as fundamentally dishonest. The damage is permanent, and the world is watching the consequences unfold in real time, lie by lie, failed damage control by failed damage control, shocking revelation by shocking revelation. The unraveling is complete. What comes after is anyone's guess, but one thing is certain: it won't include the redemption arc she desperately needs. The 30 days that changed everything came and went faster than anyone expected, but the impact lingers, deepens, spreads outward like cracks in ice. Each lie revealed becomes part of the permanent record. Each failed damage control attempt cementing the narrative of someone who thought they could outsmart everyone indefinitely. The month of lies exposed isn't just about what happened in these specific 30 days. It's about what those days finally pulled into focus, a years-long pattern that can't be denied anymore, can't be explained away, can't be buried under new PR campaigns or sympathetic interviews. The truth has a way of emerging, slowly and then all at once. And for Meghan Markle, that emergence happened this month in ways that will define her public image for the rest of her life.